Greetings, music lovers. I'm Roger Bowie for music.net. Today I'm rapping with Hannah Jane, who's part of the music.net family. But
Indeed.
more importantly, also part of Whangarei's Velvet Arrow. Big day, big weekend. Hannah, tell us all about it.
Very big. It's almost hard to believe it's actually here. This is a long time coming, as most inaugural albums. Dan and I are really excited to actually have our record on vinyl, like in print. I can't wait for you to hold yours tomorrow. And yeah, a live album release celebration, if you will, tomorrow night. And dare I say it, almost like it's a celebration with a supper, which almost makes it like a party. But for two deeply introverted humans, we're like, oh, not quite a party, but a celebration, certainly.
You don't sound and look like an introverted person.
I know, I get told that.
I've gone off script, but you can't tell me that.
You were on script. I didn't know that. Let's not do script. I am definitely an introvert, but that's just because I recharge alone at home. That doesn't mean I'm not confident. I am definitely confident. So you've got me, and yeah.
I was just looking back at my notes, and I saw you back in 2020 opening up.
That's right.
It was the old schoolmate, wasn't it, Sam Bartels?
Sam Bartels is a friend of a good friend of mine. Okay. So they went to school together, but yeah. So we met you at the Anthology Lounge, which is about as far as we sort of had reached from Whangarei. We're Auckland, and then 2020 kind of went, and then a whole lot of things changed, as we all know, in the world. So we've been pretty low key, not hibernating as such, just quietly working away at this Songs of Solitude.
Because I'm reminded that Songs of Solitude, which is the name of the album, folks, did start quite some time ago.
Right. Well, yeah, it's hard to sort of put an exact, is it a lineal timeline to it? Because, I mean, when did it start? There are a lyric in that album that I probably wrote decades ago, who knows? And then there's others that are as recent as just a few months ago. Dan and I have been actively working on producing, well, Dan's been recording it over the last 18 months, I reckon. That's how long it's been. We've sort of started some and then had to leave it for whatever reason, life. Fun fact, I have 5 children and Dan has twin girls. So that'll be a recurring theme of why we're not that fast, potentially, or it might just be our personalities.
Are you, without being too provocative, are you still in that hope and fear mood, or are things a little lighter these days? You look a little lighter these days.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel happy, which I honestly don't always, and I really do. Like, I feel content in life and I feel happy, if that's what we're talking about. But my lyric is always...
It resonates, it shows.
Yeah, thank you. I really am. I'm at a really good place in life. But my muse is, well, always close by, and she, how do I put this? Like, I'm quite happy, I'm quite comfortable feeling the poignant moments of life. So even in moments of happiness, I for some reason I've been really connected to the flip. So even, and then the same is true the other way around. If it's a sadness, it's a death, it's funeral, I can still find humor and joy. So a duality thing comes quite naturally to me. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense, but I'm going to add to that because I work with a Dr. David Beaumont, who's
right.
Who's written, I might have talked to you about.
Yeah, you've mentioned. Yeah, I've looked up some stuff.
For him, the issue is if you've got all the 4 pillars in balance.
Yes, like the Maslow's law of hierarchy.
Well, it's a prelude. It's a predisposition for self-actualization. But if you've got physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health all working optimally together, you're also strengthening your immune system.
Right. Yeah, so you're healthy,
and it shows, and then you're being your best.
So true. So okay, on that note, I'm feeling like my pillars are strong.
Yeah, I can see it.
Nice. Oh, thank you, Roger.
The fact that it's taken so long then to get from to then to now speaks obviously to persistence, tenacity,
in the journey,
a little bit of madness, a little bit of hope. But is the album therefore a metaphor for how tough it is to be an artist?
Is it a metaphor for how tough? Well, definitely it's along those lines, isn't it? It's quite vulnerable and openly transparent. It doesn't necessarily reflect our exact life, but it captures a mood, definitely.
Captures a journey.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, even you mentioned what was I going to say? Dark Was the Night that you're going to do on your show this weekend, as we talked off air. That song, interestingly, is a song I almost find impossible to sing without crying every single time. And I wrote it years ago, a few years ago now. But for some reason, you know, when you hear a song and it always transports you to a place and you get emotional, whether that's crying or just feeling a certain feeling. Absolutely. And that's great. I love that. That's what I love music for. But it's difficult when you then want to sing that song and then it's my song. It's like, what? Who wrote this thing? Yeah. It's the one song in our whole catalog that I, for some reason, find it very difficult to put aside because I like to be wherever I am. If there's one thing, if you want to quote about what does Hannah, like my philosophy in life is wherever you are, be all there. So there's a quote you didn't ask for, but you're welcome. And it's really important to me that I'm 100% where I am. However, I remember a Tom York interview that I read and that he found it really difficult to communicate his songs without getting too emotional, and he felt like it took away from the audience ability to just receive his song. You know, it became about him, which you don't want that. Like in its first incarnation, sure, it's an inner expression of what you have to offer the world, but eventually it takes a life of its own and you want it to, right? So I want the best for that song to reach the ears without me being too much involved in that. So I don't want someone feeling sorry for me that I'm crying singing my own song. And Tom York said that REM, what's his name, Michael Stipe, gave him a piece of advice to detach just a little bit, not to cry, was to remind himself, you are not, I am not here, this isn't really happening, which is where his song How to Disappear Completely came from. So I remember that.
That speaks to the lyrics actually of Hope and Fear.
That's right.
Because when I obviously one of the privileges of being a reviewer is that when I write about the songs, they're actually mine.
100%. And isn't that beautiful? I feel the same. It's really cool. I'm so glad you've reviewed this. Woohoo!
but going back to that song, what brought you to the story of Blind Willie Johnson?
Okay. It's quite a mind map, so jump on board if you will. And I could make mistakes, and hopefully I don't. But Blind Willie Johnson is somebody that I sort of stumbled upon the information about him not that long ago, a couple of years ago, and then realized backward that I already knew his music quite well. So I'm not sure if you know much about him or anything, but if you don't mind me just mentioning what I know, which is very limited. But it's a really tragic story with a very brief footprint on this earth, that he was born around, I'm going to say, 1887 or 97.
Yeah, late 19th century.
Something like that. Yeah. And then he was blinded by his stepmother as a revenge thing, something really sad when he was quite young, but he kept in his heart this dream to be a preacher and a singer, and he fulfilled that dream on dirty street corners. Really sad life. He ends up in a house fire and he stays living in his home and he catches pneumonia, and whether it's because he's black or poor, for one reason or another, he was rejected from hospital and he ends up dying, and that's it. That's his whole life. It's pretty short. And yet in 1977, his song Dark Was the Night, Cold Was the Ground, a sample of it was sent up in this is where I could go wrong, like a Hubble thing that went up in space. Ignore my ignorance. As a representation of diversity on Earth.
Okay.
To just circulate, is that the right word? Maybe
just to time capsule.
That's right. For all eternity, along with a baby's cry and a whole lot of other sounds. But his song, Dark Was the Night, Cold Was the Ground, a little sample, is up there, floating around since the year I was born, which, not to try and be narcissistically making about me, it moved me that he's been up there in a way. I'm not spiritual at all. And so I do feel like life's so short and there's very little chance of you making a deep impact that's going to continue. But making music is definitely one of the ways. And I find that powerful. Like, you know, he's sort of continuing. And then his music I had heard through Paris, Texas, the Raikuda soundtrack that deeply moved me when I was a teenager and I was nannying. And I don't know, it just all sort of linked to a certain time when I was in my teens, and yeah, I wrote a song of it.
I'm going to pull that album out. I've got that album in here somewhere.
Oh, dude, it's beautiful slide guitar, and then on that track, Dan has replicated that, as you know, sort of done his own version.
I knew there was something familiar about that.
Yeah, it's like he wasn't trying to do it exactly, but it's got that mood. You'll hear it. It's very Paris, Texas.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I'll have to rewrite my review. No, I'm not going to do that.
No, but I thought it'd be really cool to put some of that Paris, Texas video over top of our song, just to because it's that vibe that I keep thinking of when I hear it. Yeah.
So look, that's one song. What's been the process for? Well, let's talk about some of the songs, but firstly, what's the process that brings you to write, and how do you work with Dan on this? How does all that work?
Okay, so firstly, Dan is he's the genius behind Velvet Arrow. I will say that first and foremost before I start talking about my own process, because mine is more intuitive and it's more random, and Dan is far more precise, and together we work really, really well. I'm the only one doing the interview today, so I get to say that, and if he thought otherwise, well, we can check with him later. But he's off at the dentist with his twin girls, so that's life. The way we work together is that one of us will bring an offering of something and then the other one plays with it. Does that make sense? We don't often just sit in a room going, oh, empty space. It's more that we've been friends for years, and we'll send each other sound bites or a little video clip of a little thing, and then if it grabs the other person, we'll just, and there's never been any expectation, and there still isn't. If I write something, sometimes you just go, oh, that's lovely, babe, you know, and then that's that, and that's fine. And same, he might send me a guitar riff, and sometimes I'll go, oh, I've got words for that. It'll just sort of hit me.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah, that's quite the thing. And a lot of my writing process itself is actually like poetry. So it's taken together when we've worked on some songs, like for example, on our album Broken Symphony. That one I wrote a long time ago about an orchestral experience that I had that just hit me in a profound way. And I wrote poetry about it. And then that's that. And then Dan and I, the first song that we ever decided to try and sort of craft an actual song out of my words, that was the one.
Cool.
And yeah.
And Red Revenge, modern version of a fairy tale?
Yeah, pretty dark, twisted fairy tale one. That one, honestly, that was in 2020 March lockdown, you know, that very first outrageous time in the world. I was cleaning one evening, doing dishes as you do, pretty mundane, and this song, there was like a refrain that just kept going over in my head, and I was just singing to myself, because I often do that. I'll be doing something quite basic. Aforementioned 5 children means I'm often doing something pretty basic, but I let my mind, like I contain multitudes, you know, I let my mind go while I'm doing dishes, for example. And yeah, it just sort of came to me, but I thought, well, when the children are in bed, I'm going to craft something out of this. And as soon as I could, I wrote a whole story, because it's essentially a whole story. And my process, going back to your question, is that I have no boundaries about what comes out at the start. And then my most favorite thing is after, and it's often days after, but sometimes just hours, then I go through and I'm a brutal edit. Like, really, it's my most favorite part. I just go, that's unnecessary. That doesn't help.
But creative, I think, even, creativity, even in the context of a business plan, I always say, you start unconstrained and then you're constrained.
That's exactly it. And Dan has a saying that's from someone, I can't think who, but I've printed it out for him, and it's on his desk for his producing, and it says, "Does it serve the song?"
Yeah.
And that means you get rid of your ego of like, I wrote that was important to me, or but I was singing that and it sounded nice. It doesn't matter. Does it serve the song?
Yep.
I think that's nice. I like that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Thanks.
Then I'll just skip to the last two songs, Runaway Girl and Throw Me Some Hope. That there's a change of tone.
Yeah.
There's some shades of Enrico Morricone.
Oh, we like that. Thanks.
Some positivity, some redemption coming through.
Some hope. Yeah. So I guess Songs of Solitude is hopefully it flows sort of like a journey of that. It doesn't mean that like those feelings are all with us all the time, in a way, but there's a certain journey, right, from quite dark to a little bit lighter.
It's very clear.
And it doesn't mean we're not the same people. It's just, I can appreciate that I feel differently in Song of Hope and Fear, for example, or Broken Symphony, which are the first two, to then, like you said, Runaway Girl, and then Throw Me Some Hope, certainly. Runaway Girl is actually me. I don't know if you can see that, but
okay, I got it.
So my little Karen Walker Runaway Girl has been around my neck for decades, and there's a tendency in me, I don't run, like I've got 5 children. I stay where I am, but there's an internal kind of burn bridges and just walk away, and I don't know, there's a slight runaway girl part of me. If it was fight, flight, freeze, I've already gone. See ya. So that song really came about driving from Whangarei to Auckland, the Bryn Derwins, which you'll come up over tomorrow night, and don't listen to this if this isn't been you, but I've had this strange thing every time I've ever driven on that, of just imagining if you went off the edge and like you could create a whole new world for yourself. It's crazy, but it's just a little like that. And one time I wrote a song about it, which was just basically, well, there's a lyric in there that says, I don't want to die, but I could take another name. So it's just like, imagine if you just ran away from this existence and started again, and it is still hopeful. I'd survive, it's like that. And then Throw Me Some Hope was done through the pandemic, and I was just reflecting on the time for the world. It wasn't specifically about me, but it's an interesting lyric in there that says, it's been a hard year, the worst of its kind. Yes. And it's like, sometimes it feels like each year subsequently has been in its own way. It might have been a personal hardest year for me, who knows, back then, but then the pandemic, or then the Middle East, and without going too much into that, it's always kind of the worst year of its kind at the moment for some people. Where we might be okay in ourselves with the pillars and all that. So I think it's just a nod to the fact that just because I might be feeling great today or this year doesn't mean someone's not going through the hell, and to be mindful of that. Does that make sense? So
very much. No, I get that. It does come through that journey, and all right. Good. And it's a great album, I have to say. Spoiler
Thank you. I'm feeling good about that. Thank you.
Okay, so launch party tomorrow night. What happens next? Are we going on the road? What are you going to do?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm going to say, in an ideal world, because I'm a dreamer, in an ideal world, in all honesty, Dan and I, and luckily we're so alike in this, we would stay behind the scenes, writing, creating, playing around with videos all year, and then we'd show up once a year and go, ta-da! It's like a baby, like a creation. Here you go, here's our offering this year, and then we would vanish again. This is the introvert in me, but it's
introversion. That's now I get it.
A basic acknowledgement of, hey, what am I first and foremost besides Hannah the human? I am mother right now, and that is, I love that, and I want to honor that. So I have a 9-year-old, 9, 11, 13, 15 and 16-year-old. I'm not going anywhere major. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't come to Gore for you. I would. If you want to invite us, I would make that happen. But I don't see us gigging endlessly. I'd do a special show for sure. You know, if Adam McGrath said, "Hey, Hannah, the Eastern are playing at the Tuning Fork. Does Velvet Arrow want to come and open?" Hell yes. If Nick Cave happened to say, "Hey,"
I could send this interview to Adam, but I can't reach Nick. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't trying for a plug, but that's my dream. The ideal version of this would be that we just create an album. Honestly, one a year. We could do that for decades. Because I've got so much writing. So much. I've just got hundreds of songs that are waiting to be born.
Okay, there you go, folks. Well, there's a treasure trove, and it starts tomorrow.
It does,
and it's out on vinyl.
That's right. So that's exciting. That's Holiday Records, New Zealand made. That's an amazing thing. Mastered at Cog Studio with Chris Chetland.
He's a master.
Who sent beautiful words to Dan, which for Dan was incredible. For a sound engineer, for a producer, that was pretty mind-blowing.
I haven't met Chris, but I've only heard good things about him.
100%. So then Holiday Records, they were just beautiful. We went and watched it. We actually watched our music turn up. You know, it's so amazing. It's tangible. It's real. You can touch it. You can join the vinyl revival and Slow Down Life just a tiny bit. So we've just done a giveaway of a vinyl of ours and a slip mat of a friend of ours who has a radio show up here in Whangarei, and a little Crossley record player. It's just cheap and cheerful, entry level, but we're like, join our counter revolution. Slow Down Life. I tell you, it's a winning thing.
Of course, people can stream it as well, right?
100%. Yeah, it's on all. It will be, as of tomorrow, on all platforms that you want to find us on.
All right, folks. I'm going to wrap it up at this point, but it's a sensational debut album from
thank you,
from Velvet Arrow. So congratulations, Hannah and Dan.
Thank you, Roger.
Songs of Solitude is out tomorrow. Go take a listen. Cheers.
Thank you so much.